I'll preside over the action today. We have with us Vice President Jamie Avila, Director Pete Ogden, Director Clement Kachuk, Director Kat Williams, and Treasurer Bob Letty. Noting presence of a quorum, may I have a motion to call the meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. Bob, motion, Clement second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So now we're going to adjourn to executive session. So may I have a motion to adjourn to executive session at 5:04 p.m. Second from Clement. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we're now in executive session. And into regular session at 6:00 p.m.
So moved.
Bob made the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Trish second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries 7-0. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us in person today. Do we have anyone on the phone?
Not yet.
All right. Cool. Small cozy group. Good stuff. We had just one item on the executive agenda today. There was a request for a hearing with the board on the various requests that AMC had denied. So the board heard that and we'll follow up with that. So first item on the agenda today is approval of prior meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the board of February 9th, 2023 as presented?
I think the motion is that one correction. It has Jamie out of this refers to me as she. I pronoun is he. And I think
Thank you for specifying.
but other than that, I make the motion to approve the minutes of last.
I second.
Okay.
Sorry, that's not funny. I don't know why.
The ladies.
Does that count?
The cat was had the second. Any discussion? Any other discussion on the minutes?
Well, no.
Right. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries 7-0. All right, so then I think on the printed agenda, we had a financial review. No, sorry, we wanted to do the monthly management report. That was the next thing on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So lots of things. You guys get the monthly management report emailed to you, and usually I vacillate between keeping this on here or not, because a lot of the next report is what you see on the agenda is kind of what we have going on. But audit is still in progress. Some things that aren't on here. So audit's still in progress. We're going to get that wrapped up hopefully in the next 30 days or so, and get that presented to you guys. And we're seeing an influx of key fob requests, as you can imagine, because of the pool being super duper hopping. The Belterra Marlins kicked off their season on May the 1st, and all is going well there. So not a whole lot else to report there other than actionable items on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so then the thing that was next on the agenda is the financial review, but we're going to move that to a little bit later in the agenda today, so we can cover a couple of new business items in conjunction with the financial review. So next we'll move on to the committee updates. We're going to start with the AMC, and Martha, you're covering that one.
Yes, I don't think we have the ANC numbers here. They are reviewing on average 3 to 5 a week, and various things, nice, easy, kind of low-hanging fruit items, you know, a few landscaping changes here or there, and then some bigger ones, some pools, and recently met with one of the architectural committee members about possibly making some changes to the design guidelines. So we will be kind of ironing that out in probably the next, probably by the end of the year is what I would anticipate.
Thank you. And then we wanted to move on to the code committee.
Thanks, Jim.
Hello.
Would you like to come to the meeting?
Sure.
Thanks for being here, Jim.
What is it? CNN or?
So yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to be here and let's give our report today. Helen Anderson is here, our committee as well. So our committee was started in late 2022 by the RAC, and I was volunteered to be the chairperson at that point. I think Clement had something to do with that. And I subsequently then sent out an email to the 43 households who would go as volunteers. And this is the list of the people who responded. So we were, very pleased. We really love our community. It's we do have a lot of block parties. Ken Crone retired a week ago, and so we had his wife hosted a pizza party at the pizza cave for him. So a lot of folk people were there. So it was, it's a big group of people. So Helen handles issue support for Ken on the gates as well as me on some items. Ken's our issue lead for gates. At our first meeting in November, we kind of determined what the issues were and assigned kind of a lead, and so who would spear the resolution. Spearhead that was Ken on gates. Jim supports Ken a lot of the issues, including landscaping. Jane's kind of our co-director and communications person. She keeps a list of all the people's email addresses and stuff when new people come in and out. There's not a lot of turnover there, but she updates that. So it helps me because I use that distribution list to send out announcements as well. I chair the committee and I'm the issue lead for financial and organizational responsibility issues that come up. Jen Bauer and his wife Sarah lead the trail extension issues, and Sarah also volunteered to support. She's a cartographer, so community layouts of where things are.
Awesome.
Marshall, community layouts of where things are. Sarah, she's great on that stuff. Steve Segal is the green spaces maintenance lead, and Beth supports those issues as well. And Larry Carver is the lead for green spaces privacy. And Annette Rainey volunteered. She's a real estate broker, so we have questions on any of that, any issues that come up that affect home values. So next slide. So kind of let me say, we really love Belterra. We love our community, and the issues here we feel are things to improve our quality of life and increase home values. So that's kind of our focus on these things. So let me kind of run down where we are, and then I'll have the board request on the last slide. So relative to asset reserve reconciliation, after our committee was formed, I met with Marcia, and she was kind enough to share a variety of documents, a lot of which are in your closing statements, which I'm sure all of you read regularly. So reminding people what they're liable for and what they're committed to when they bought a home. And she also shared their reserve study at that time, as well as all the financial statements and documents that were on the public. So I'm not an accountant, but I started looking at the different financial statements, and there were a lot of accounts I didn't understand, but again, I'm not an accountant. It wasn't clear what those were, and Marcia wasn't sure either, so we thought talked about that, which subsequently happened. I was in my previous subdivision. I was on the long range planning committee and finance committee. So and we completely redid the facility. I mean, golf course improvements, we did the pool there, we did the clubhouse, and we did the roads. So I'm somewhat familiar with the cost structures. When I saw the reserve numbers for the co, I thought they were pretty high. I didn't know that was because of labor costs, COVID, the supply chain issues, but they appear to be high in my opinion. So I understand there's an audit review pending of the different financials as well as the reserves. These issues are no real area, but I can tell you, focus first it's hot. By the way, Marcia, exit gate on the cold east side is stuck.
Just 3 hours ago, when you emailed me saying it was 150, but yeah, okay.
So
yep, it's fancy.
So So yeah, so Ken leads that discussion, he's met with Marcia, they talk over different strategies, Marcia's tried trail cameras and whole variety of things to help explain what gates don't work. Having seen garbage trucks, I think, you know, hit gates on the way in and around, there's, you know, whatever the reasons are, they're not very reliable. A good majority of people bought into the code because of the gates. So obviously they're not real happy when there's a lot of gates are open and door. Sarah and Jeff have spent a lot of time at WCID board meetings on the trail extension issues. They've had a couple of changes made, but their request to put in more privacy and access is has gone for that. And we had people wondering about the trails when they decided they walked too far. And they come under Mendocino when there's no exit out of Mendocino because they don't have the pedestrian gate codes. So they're been on people's doors and has to be let out, or they wander into people's backyards. So when the way the trail is designed, it kind of leads you right to looking at Sarah's house, and there are 4 or 5 houses that are all there, and some of the houses have gates, and so people walk in their gates in the lot. So it's both a safety and a privacy issue that we addressed, and at this point, WCID has not done to their request. They've been to several board meetings. Steve has been to up to Infomart a couple of times to request the removal of downed trees in the green belts on either side of Mendocino that are WCID owned. And my understanding is that's a fire break, and so they're dead trees. And of course, now that the ice storm has gone through, there are a lot more down trees to take care of. I attended the joint committee transition meeting between WCID and MOS, and it mentioned this issue. Some of the WCID board members didn't know where the code was or where Mendocino Lane was, and the next morning they drove through there with an ATV. I don't know that that already was surveyed to be a part of the review of what needed to be taken care of. But I'm kind of hoping it's on the list now. Helen and one of the residents have written work orders, and they were sure it would be taken care of the next day, but that was weeks ago. So the trees are still down. They did cut the grass. The contract was for 3 times a year. So they did cut the high grass after the wildflower season, but they left all the high grass that's right under the broken branches and trees, which doesn't sound like a good idea. Larry Carver has worked on the issue of privacy. When a lot of the trees come down, there's the views that are to the other backyards, and they're working the trees up. And again, Larry's emailed some of the MOS for the WCAD board members, and they responded to them saying they can't do anything about it. But the minutes from October of last year showed that they did approve installing privacy trees. So I think maybe part of it has to be part of the budget, and the budget process starts in May. So we're going to make any requests, and we really have to get some input into that point in time. And finally, other listeners have questions on who owns what, who's liable for what. There's a small blurb on responsibilities on the Belterra website, and so I started doing some work over the matrix. Marcia was kind of that with me, and she filled in the blanks that I didn't know about. There's still an open issue with who owns the Mendocino Lane Road itself. So, and that is an issue relative to the service. Well, we get back to that. So those are our issues today. And so I have to forward to do what they would, please. And when I run through these, and then you can respond to these. Oh, actually, are there any questions on the issues that we respond? Okay.
No, you did a great job putting that together. Thank you.
Sure, please. So these are requested for it. So, and Bob's going to be talking more about these, and Marcia's got a percent information as well. But it'd be great to reconcile the Belterra for reserve accounts from 2017 to present. And again, that we discussed a little bit in the like you to approve the preventive maintenance contract for operation and building diagnostics. For the total operating expense budget, I think there's about $13,000 available I don't remember how much has been spent, but Martha's got some figures on that. We had asked the previous installer who's been coming out to fix it on occasion. I asked if they were getting diagnostic routines that they can run, because it's a electromechanical system. But apparently he can't do that, or it doesn't have those algorithms built into the system. So hopefully a new contractor can take a fresh look at the gates and say, you know, this is what's wrong. Replace the operators, replace the gates, replace everything, whatever the right answer is there. We're still about 7 years away from replacement of those gates. So it'd be good to have some information before we just say we'll spend the money. We'd like your support to WCID in whatever fashion you can do it with the ice damage and tree removal. WCID and Samantha was very optimistic about ice damage removal. She said, I'm hoping for June, but it could be August. So that's in the kind of the worst part of the year to have a lot of dead branches and trees in the fire rate. They implied that all we had to do was talk to MLS and have work orders created, but that hasn't worked yet. So we're asking your opinion here. Do you think we should pursue work orders for trail extension issues or any issues we have with WCID too in general? You could use your help on that. And finally, there was finally resolved the organization responsibilities for both assets. I think Marcia just waiting for some input from Hayes County and WCID on who owns Mendocino Lane. I mean, we have the worst case scenario right now. If they own it and code is funding it, that doesn't sound like a good idea. So whatever that solution is, it's good to have. And I don't know if the Belterra attorney can help with that. Any questions on our request?
So I'd like to make a comment. I think I'll allow you. So maybe what I want to say isn't founded in any sense of reality, but say so you've done a tremendous job compiling, tracking issues, built out a great team. I'm really impressed with what you put together and what you're working towards. I did have a few moments of pause as you were looking through the list and sharing it, because as a charter committee of Belterra Community Association and tackling things that may be outside the scope of the association on behalf of the association, maybe there's a reason for pause there. I'm not trying to encourage you to not do those things specifically which take you on the wrong path. I think you have overachieved anything we had imagined possible for the committee when we approved and chartered this how many months ago. And so maybe as you continue to evolve and take this advocacy for that area of the community further, we need to think about the scope and how things are structured so that you are able to add to your maximum effectiveness to whatever organizations you rely on and aren't artificially bound by somebody like me saying, oh, maybe you don't want to attach the community association name to that action. And now again, code is different because the association is beholden you in different ways than it is to the other residents given arrangements on the properties. It's a thing I think we need to think about and explore and pay attention to, but I don't mean to say this in any way. The work you're doing is tremendous. I want to make sure that everybody feels empowered to advocate fully through the right venues. Does that make sense?
It does. So, appreciate your comment. If you give us a direction on we're more than happy. To be honest, we'd rather not spend it on WCA board meetings or activities for Hayes County. I know Marcia does some of this because that's part of the management position. But we spent a lot of time following MLS and other things. And we'd rather not have to do that. So if you've got, you just say, hey, work with Marcia, on these issues, that the board, you know, let the board know on these, we're going to have to do that. You know, as I said, it's more frustrating. We kind of enjoyed the meeting, which, you know, was hosted up at the Belterra Center, and they promise things and then don't deliver. So we don't have any recourse other than to keep going there, or to ask you if there's anything you can do.
Yeah.
I think we've got to put a fine point on it. I think what you're saying is this board can't do anything about WCID. So please, if you want to spend your time, you know, taking those issues to them, by all means do. There's no authority we have with them. That
As
being,
part of it, also, as they exist right now, they are an organization acting on behalf of this board, because we chartered them to the committee. And we said, go do this stuff, and so they are taking action, again, with those third parties on matters that are outside of the state. And again, not because I don't want you to accomplish everything you need to have the experience you want there, but with this bizarre structure we have, and I want to make sure that we empower you to do that without necessarily carrying the baggage of being part of this. And so if the code committee becomes a code club, and there are elements of it that are responsible for interactions with WCID, and elements of it that are responsible for interactions with this board and the community association, maybe that's a structure that in the future frees up a broader range of influence. And we can still help, and we can, you know, there are questions that Marcia might know the answer to, and all those things. But when your residents are in the WCID meeting, bang on the table, it's we're the code and we care about it, not we're on the code committee of the Belterra Community Association we care about
Yeah, I guess we look at who was like an influencer.
it. We don't.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, WCB is the only issue. They're the only organization outside here. I mean, we don't go to the outside country, so we work with Marcia Gates. Of course, we keep going Marcia as our little violence Gates and it's you know, yeah, we work through them and, you know, through the RAC that chartered us. You know, we would ask them to cut the cap if there were, you know, what about this, what should about that. So I guess other than WCID issues, there are a few of those. You know, I introduced myself, that name is Samantha. Lucky Sarah, nice female, I talked to her, and you know, never had a response, you know, in that. And you know, I called them also and said, you know, what besides the MOS work, is there something else that we should do? But you know, generally, you get put on hold with some of what the academic does. So you know.
That's a very frustrating situation.
Yeah, so, I mean, we could just say, strategies, it's possible, that, you know, they're gonna take care of the ice dam someday, and they're gonna plant trees someday. And we can put it workers and say, you know, can you do that? What happens? We can certainly do that. Other than that, I don't think we've operated outside the bounds of the RAC, unless I'm missing something here.
I think
that only question.
just one thing with that, and it's maybe more to Marcia, if they stepped back and were a club, could we share financials and things with them and be as transparent with a club as we can a chartered committee?
Well, the financials are available to any homeowners that want.
Okay,
So, yeah,
so it would work either, so your transparency level wouldn't change if they wanted to step back and be a club that went to both. Because one of my thoughts was maybe you approach WCID and get a charter under them as well, and then y'all are kind of a committee under both. So that way, maybe it could help your communication with them if you're a chartered committee under them, but I don't know if you can double charter a committee.
Well, they're a government organization. But I mean, I can certainly.
one of the things I had suggested to Sarah when she started coming to me about the concerns with the trail extension was, you know, I don't know how this applies to again, WCID, but in other communities, I've managed, we've had like a trails committee. So she could approach them with an idea for a trails committee. So I don't know where that went, if anywhere. But that would definitely be a question for WCID as to whether or not they would be open to establishing any kind of committees for that purpose.
Cause it's just kind of hard for the code. Just the way, and pretty much all of Belterra is similar, is having the two different governing entities that don't, you know what I mean? The communication for the code would be a lot smoother if you were working under both.
Yeah, I mean, we'd rather not struggle with WCID responsibilities because we're kind of stuck with that. But, and because you need relationship, how the code is needed, we're under review, So I guess we don't look at ourselves as unique residents, other than we have some constraints we have to work within. Whether they're assessments to pay for the weekly lawn cutting and service, or whatever those things are, and Marcia likes all that stuff, and we know that, and you see the reserves and financials, so that's all shared with residents, so,
So now let's talk about things we can help you with, because you're not very helpful with the WCAD for the different contractor for the gate maintenance, right? And so do we have the estimate? So we've gotten three bids. Okay.
Yes, so Elite Access Control, they offer a monthly option, so they sent that over. Gate Doctors and Capital City Gates, they don't offer a monthly option, which I think that might be overkill anyway. Quarterly seems to be the most popular, kind of preventative maintenance for gates. So Elite Access Control comes in at $1,600. They did not make any additional recommendations when they came out to take a look. And they did not provide, we didn't ask, let me say this, I didn't ask for operator replacement option. One of them did go ahead and just say, here you go, in case you want to replace them. So I went ahead and included that in here as well. Total annual cost for Gate Doctors for quarterly PM is $2,200, and Capital City Gates is $6,200. They had upfront recommendation repairs, and actually they will not take on the work unless we do these additional upfront overhaul, replacing the batteries. They want to get it to a good starting point first. So my recommendation would be to go with Gate Doctors. Not only are they kind of the middle of the road, but I liked that he found some very minute things. He found a crack in one of the welds that I had to walk up to and go, oh, look, there it is. So, and he's very passionate about gates. I just like the way he kind of presented himself and their company. And he went ahead, like I said, provided an option for replacing all four, which I know that you guys have kind of batted around, maybe not. I thought, great, I appreciate him providing those numbers, so at least you knew kind of what that looks like. And one of the benefits of Gate Doctors is they are a local company. They're based in Derby Springs, so I'm expecting some quick service.
And they have good reviews and customer service.
Very good. They also, when he was out there, he was talking to me. He didn't just go out there and take pictures of the operators and go, okay, I'll get you a number. He was like, let's take a look at this. Let's open the hatch. Let's look at the whole system. First of all, he does not like the brand of operators that are there. So they're not generally known for their longevity, which didn't surprise. Wouldn't surprise any fellow residents. He did kind of observe that one of the operators may go out in the next 2 to 3 years because of how it sounded, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then he just kind of listened to it.
Did he have a stethoscope?
I felt like that's what he was doing, like feeling like he asked a lot of questions, a lot of just really like digging into it. So I was super duper impressed with that.
Yeah, I mean, Marcia shared this with Ken and I, so we've seen this stuff. Yeah, that seems like a good recommendation.
But when I called the company, the gal that answers, like a person that answers the phone, she remembered me when I had to call her for something else. Oh, yeah, Marcia, right about Belterra. So I was like, this is fantastic. This is like the service I like to receive.
Is there any contract, breaking the contract with our current provider that we have to account for?
There is no, it's going to be
Hasn't been.
paid by a service.
Yeah, kind of materials, kind of thing.
So then you're hoping that this as a preventative maintenance will keep them from breaking down, kind of be proactive rather than reactive.
Well, oh, that, and also the diagnosis of the problem, so if we need, you know, of the 4 operators, can be replaced.
Yeah.
You know, how does that stand, what was in the reserve fund, is, all those things that lead to that, but.
He already has a theory about what's happening. It may be a little premature, but his theory is the optical, like the eyes, again, on garage door, that if you go through, it makes the gate go open. Those boxes are extremely dirty and a lot of cobwebs and stuff inside that. So if there's the least little bit of not communication, it's gonna stop the gate because it thinks there's a human being there. Also, he wants to evaluate all of the pressure sensors that are in the asphalt, because he was talking about if they're not connected right, they may be sending a signal to the gate that there's a car there. And so he really wants to dig into all that. He actually seemed really excited about it.
So is any of that extra, or is that all included?
That'll be, that was the thing I liked, is we don't have to do that $1,000 repair for them to take it on. He's like, here's what it is, we'll come in. And so his initial preventative maintenance, he'll look at all those things and anything that needs replacement or needs repair, like he might come in and say some of those eyes need to be replaced. So then there may be some upfront, or after this, there may be a repair bill that comes in that we need to look at. But like Jim said, you know, they've got $13,000 annually budgeted towards gate repairs or just gate things, and they have more than enough money to fund that $2,200 annually.
Okay.
But I think what you're really asking about is, so for him to come out and do all that work, is there T&M? What services are covered under the quarterly maintenance versus all this work he wants to go do? What is the bill for that initial?
We won't, well, the initial assessment, and I'll pull up the actual proposal to show exactly what goes into preventative maintenance. It's, you know, it's operating, he mentioned they operate the gates about 20 or 25 times while they're out there, just cycling them and making sure nothing sounds funky. They do, here's so you can see. You know, cleaning them up, making sure, make sure there's no leaks, or keeping the dirt off of things, like I said, servicing those eyes or those peripherals. Testing, like I says, testing the voltages, testing the external peripherals, replacing batteries and keypads and remotes if available, insect repellent in any areas, and just making sure everything is
Beehives will
operating.
down a plane.
Mhm.
Beehives will down a plane, they can take out a gate. Insect repellent's important.
So you're like happy with the, so happy with the scope of services they're proposing?
Yeah, as an engineer. So basic first operations, you need to clean your garage door. Too. But yeah, things with checking sensors in the past that haven't been sufficiently, but like today, like why did we start that?
Especially when I was just out there yesterday with him, we cycled every day and did this 10 times.
And to be honest, gives Martian and Christine more time to do their real job than you say.
Well, and I really like this. I like the preventative stuff, lubricating, brushing, cleaning. So are y'all interested in this plus the fix on top, or would you want them to do this first and then see if it's working, and if it's not, try the $1,000?
The well repair.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what kind of motion to make, right?
Yeah.
Do you want the motion to approve this to include and
He didn't have there are some things that fix the functionality of the system.
I would say hold off on the weld repair because I suspect he's gonna find things, and let's put the weld repair. It's not gonna fall off. It's visibly cracked, but I don't think there's an imminent danger there, and it's not affecting the operation of the gate. It was just something we found.
I mean, the objective of preventive maintenance, they find out a problem, and they do that. Just like you take your car to the dealership, they say, oh, by the way, this is, you take your off, it's very wrong.
That's the way that I'm leaning to. So I guess I make a motion that we,
Go to the spreadsheets we have.
Yes.
Wait,
yeah, go for it, absolutely.
what's is this a quarterly expense and then after every friend maintenance? It's available to cancel, or are you signing up for a year, 2 years,
You're signing up for a year.
so it's 1 year?
What's the cancellation policy like? That was a good question, Pete.
I did not ask that.
Okay.
We have our contract, we can look at that really fast.
It's not a little bit, I think he just did it. I accidentally closed the last thinking window. Sorry.
I mean, I guess that part can be negotiated as well, if the contract hasn't been already written up. I guess we can still
Well,
negotiate it.
we're paying it looks like for the whole year, so that's. Yeah. So the contract probably is not gonna have a cancellation, because they're not gonna refund the money.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, except if it maybe auto renews or you have to give 30 days notice or something.
Yeah.
And it just says this is a estimate for contract services.
I mean, we could motion to approve this, you know, dependent on,
Or we could just do it as, I don't know, we could do it over email, right, once we see the contract and make sure.
I would put the contract on the template that Clint already blessed for services, so it would be a matter of agreeing to 30-day out, or, you know, maybe it's 90-day out because it's a quarterly kind of thing. And he doesn't have on here that it's a pay up front. The way it's written is $550 per quarter.
Make a motion for a quarterly payment. And then contingent on a contract that lets us get out. Every quarter, something like that.
So it'd be quarter to quarter.
Quarter contract. That's all right.
It's fine.
you wanna make that
So
motion?
fine, sign up for a year and whatever.
No.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll make a motion to hire gate doctors for $550 a quarter, contingent on a contract that allows us to just for quarter to quarter.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Right, Sarah, so also on your list of things for us was a reconciliation of the reserves, is that?
Yeah, that's something that's kind of already in Jim's and I've already talked about that. It's already kind of doing that administratively, is to reconcile not only the reserves, because Jim kind of mentioned about looking at it and saying, this just seems like a lot of money for us to be reserving. We won't be able to fully know until we can resolve this question of road ownership.
Is the road public or private?
It's private.
So
Because it's gated.
Because it's gated, and when you pull up, you know, when you go onto Hayes
plat?
County CAD, you can look and it shows, if you click on a road, it doesn't give you any ownership information. If you click on this section of Mendocino Lane, it says it's owned by WCID too, which is really odd,
Well,
but,
the plat should show though.
well, the plat does show, the plat states that the private roads, so the portion of Mendocino behind the gates, that it shall, not be the responsibility of Hayes County to take on the maintenance of it unless the road is brought up to Hayes County standards. Okay, I didn't have anyone tell me it's not or it is, so that's kind of a question. And then part 2 of it states that basically the ownership and the maintenance, that if someone other than the owner is maintaining it, it should be codified via recorded instrument. And I can't find
And there's
anything to
nothing
that effect.
recorded.
So I've been just, you know.
Well, you should be able to find it from grantor grantee or something from the
And I
developer.
searched
or
everything
a
with
dedication.
on recorded documents, and I cannot find anything. So I've been kind of trying to dig in and do my due diligence and leaving voicemails for people left and right, county and because you guys also pay a special road tax. And I started with the county to say, do you have this section of Mendocino Lane? Trying to be a little tricky, but you know, do you have this on your roster for a road that needs, you know, for part of maintenance? And that guy never called me back, so we gotta trying to go to different angles. I think it's gonna get to a point where it's just, all right, sit down with WCID too and say, what are we gonna do about this? Because if the code, i.e. Belterra, is not responsible for maintaining that road, then they have extra funds. And but there's a question of how much extra funds they have now too. So that's part of what I've got some numbers that I've been playing with, and before I commit to those numbers, I want somebody smarter than me to review that, i.e. an auditor. But that's kind of a big deal, to promise people money that may not exist. Yeah.
Is it a clarification exercise, maybe money, you know, safety issue, you know, trying to be there and get
Correct.
No, the truck is loaded, the roads are quite built at the same quality and specifications that are out there driving.
It seems to be, I just don't know. Is there a pothole fellow that we don't know about?
No, I was gonna say that, when the last house was closed on Mendocino, and I can't remember if it was February 21 or 22, WCID took control of that private street. And it is documented. I can't bring it up because I don't
Yeah.
know why. But it is, and we have to maintain it, but WCID owns it.
Okay, that's why I need to see that document that shows that we're responsible for maintaining it.
So when you, for clarification, when you say it's documented, so it's recorded in the
Yes,
public
yes,
records?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't find it, so my next step is just to contact WCID too and say, where's this document? Do you have it? Does it exist? So I can just put it in my, you know, into our files and then we know. So.
You looked on the case tab.
I looked at
Case
it,
tab is showing you was deeded over to East County Water Control.
and that's the only one I can find.
2/18 and 20.
That's the only document I can find, but that document doesn't speak to maintenance responsibility or maintenance being bequeathed to someone else.
Right, so more work to do there.
Yes.
So I think that's all that you needed from us today, I think in terms of what we can contribute, or is there something?
No, it's something that.
Okay.
I'll think another one that I see it to support.
One that I have is our board, the WCID, and they have elections every now and then for a new board member, so there's a member of the code that they want to run the WCID at this point in time. That would give you more decision making power than you have.
I had a religion as well.
You're not.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
No, that's great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Great job.
You did an amazing job.
All right, comments up next for RIC.
RIC has been in stages since we looked at a couple of issues came up. People started talking about forming other committees going in this direction. Then we started with a planning effort. And the strategic plan or the SOR is really the conduit for things to be brought to the RIC. If we look at the SOR, you'll see the resource RIC is specified in several places. And that decision was taken because we felt we wanted to have a cohesive and coordinated approach to getting committees launched rather than doing one-offs kind of in a reactive way. So that's the situation. With the approval of the SOR, the RIC will ramp up considerably.
Okay, thank you. Then we wanted to talk about the value assurance, service provider value assurance.
Sure, so the Service Provider Value Assurance Committee has been working through the process of from our manage, track, and report on our vendors. So we can evaluate the vendors supporting our community and making sure that we are being mindful and providing feedback regarding the service we are receiving. Working with them to improve that service and making sure that we're considering all factors and reaching out to identify new service providers on a basis. We have started by developing and deploying a vendor evaluation worksheet for our new pool maintenance vendor. Near Water, I think. Progressive Army, it was signed in October, so we want to get something in place to trial. Prior to starting the season. With that recommendation, so we have that we're using throughout the summer to track any issues and how they're fulfilling their duties based on the contract. Committees also compile a list of vendors by tier based on annual spend, ongoing presence, and risk to the community. We'll use this list to prioritize the next stage, which vendors we go develop for next, and then work to build out and adopt process moving operating.
Did we talk about when, so when we get into old business, we talk about action taken between meetings, which includes improving that pool evaluation. But I can't remember, we talked about publishing that somewhere during the tension, just to be able to share with the community, not from evaluating.
There's right now, these are the working outcomes to the structure. Once we visit that.
Right. Thanks, Steve. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, any questions for Pete?
No, y'all did a great job on that. Thank you.
Right, now we wanted to talk about strategic planning.
All right, so I'm chair of strategic planning committee, and essentially we've been working on the strategic operations roadmap. And so the goal with that is to create a document where you can think, you know, if you have an issue come up and you wonder as a board member, who is assigned to that, or who can help me with that? What's our resource? You can pull this document up and it's organized and you can figure out, okay, it goes to this committee, or I need to talk to Marcia. So it's been a lot of work into that. And I believe it's further down in the agenda where we're going to talk more about it. So I won't take up much time here.
I believe you, I mean, my mind's not looking right now. I don't.
No, I think this is when you.
Oh, is
Yeah,
this
this is
Wednesday?
when you're-
Oh,
yeah.
okay. For some reason, that's new business, but I wasn't sure.
I try to keep the reports, the committee reports together with what their asks are.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah, so no, you're still.
Yeah, I downloaded everything because the Wi-Fi wasn't working, and so, but somehow the agenda didn't download.
It's
So
maybe working now.
I've
She
been
just has
trying.
the agenda that she
Oh.
can see, she's got a PS4.
Yeah, I do. Can you go to the
Yes.
first slide, please?
Yes,
So
thank you.
one of the big highlights for me is with elections for new board members being every year. So we elect two new board members, and the next year we elect 3. So this is a year where we elect 3. That's almost half of the board. So with new board members coming on every year, management staff changes, we have quite a bit of turnover. And without a set plan of knowledge and ways of doing things can be lost. So to help carry the knowledge forward to the new board members and staff, we've created a strategic operations roadmap. And it's essentially a prioritized statement of intent, a big plan. And by creating this roadmap and sharing it, we're clearly identifying our goals and the steps necessary to achieve them. All right, can you go to our next slide, please? So everything in the strategic operation roadmaps has a priority level. And so I kind of highlighted the top priorities that we have is first to identify our stakeholders and how to engage with them and communicate effectively. Create reiterative feedback loops so that way we can better understand our community as it changes and how to best meet the needs and wants of our residents. Identify participation of the committees and board of directors, management, so all these groups are working together more smoothly. Identify and optimize our assets and address the recommendations from the report Clement and Don did in 2022. So really we created this document with the intent to be a living document. So the goals we're hoping will be pretty set. They're the goals of the community. And then the objectives are pretty set as well. And so tonight, I'm hoping that we can approve those. And then the tasks will change over time. So just because life evolves. So one of our tasks or one of our goals is to communicate effectively with our stakeholders. And one of the tasks right now is to increase participation on the Facebook page. But Facebook might not be around 10 years from now. It might be a different medium. We still want good engagement, but 10 years from now, that engagement might look differently. So that's why the tasks are broken down to be more specific, but the main goals and objectives still stay there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of my,
Do you want me to put that somewhere up there?
yeah. And I figure before we motion anything, we can kind of talk about it, answer questions.
If I'll, may I
Yeah,
interject?
go for it.
The model is based on work done by a pair of professors from Harvard University years ago, Kaplan and Norton. They came up with a balanced scorecard. I don't know if anybody's heard that term before. But it takes any organization and uses it from 4 different perspectives. That is your stakeholders, your customers, if you're in a commercial environment, the outfacing part of the organization. Then it's operations excellence. Then it's learning and growth. How do we capture our knowledge? How do we communicate our knowledge from generation to generation? How do we train our people? How do we get better at what we do? And then finally, of course, is the financial aspect of an organization. So all of our goals are put in each of those main perspectives. The goals are fairly generic. Most organizations are going to share goals that are very similar. The objectives, you start to see differentiation, how to achieve those goals. So the flavor of the organization starts to be reflected very well in the objectives. And then finally, and of course, a goal can have multiple objectives. It's what things have to get done in order to achieve the goal. And then similarly, the atomization of objectives to tasks. You can have multiple tasks to achieve an objective. The goal of this is when you do a strategic plan, it has several attributes. It has to be comprehensive, it has to be cohesive, it has to be clearly communicated, it has to be reiterative, it has to have a feedback loop baked in. In many organizations, that's called business intelligence. But there has to be a way to, once you've set your KPIs, your expectations of the various goals and objectives, there has to be a way to track to see how you're doing. And then you modify in a continuous loop, you analyze the feedback, and then you modify the strategic direction, and then communicate that, and on it goes. This gets you out of the model of a 5-year strategic plan and into the model of a continuous improvement, strategic direction. So that's what we attempted to do here. I want to take a moment to say kudos to the committee members. We had some very senior people spending hours or many weeks to come up with this, and I think it achieved the goals. And that's my input.
Clement's being very humble because he has put the most hours into this. We really appreciate your effort and expertise in this area.
I appreciate the thing I'll say too in that regard is I have applied this this model, this technique over multiple organizations around the world, and it has worked very well in all cases that I know.
And some highlighted things that might seem interesting is like on one, ensure stakeholder satisfaction. I remember when I first read that, I was like, oh, like we just have residents. But as we talked about it as a committee, we have residents, we have real estate agents, we have vendors that we work with, we have people who, I guess those would be vendors as well. So there's multiple different angles that we need to be addressing here. And so yeah, this addresses a lot of them.
So the ask is, eventually you do want to make a motion to approve this. So,
Would you like me to make that motion and then we discuss?
yeah, and then I'll ask for discussion, so yeah. let's do that.
All right, I move we approve the strategic operations roadmap and its formation and application as a basis for BCA efforts and activities with the goals, Yeah, with the goals and objectives set as is, with board authority to change. And with the tasks, metrics, priorities, and resources, flexibility for the strategic planning committee and management to make changes as needed. So that's where we're kind of really trying to set the goals and objectives and giving flexibility on the tasks over time.
Flexibility to whom, I didn't quite understand that from the motion about who then has ownership for the tasks.
So it would be the person who is, can you go back to the SOR?
Yeah.
So not the board.
So it
What
would-
you're asking for approval on is for these tasks to go be executed by the people in that last column as written.
So they would have the ability to kind of the flexibility to change them, because as a strategic planning committee, we understand what CVAC is doing, but we don't know exactly the ins and outs of it. And so we want to work with them on the wording for their tasks to put into here. Same thing with the welcome committee. And we don't want to constantly overwhelm the board with, hey, they want to change this, they want to change that. And so it kind of allow the committees to make changes here and there as needed, and then it would be reported back to the board. And then, of course, the board can say, actually, we don't want you doing that. That kind of, the board obviously has power to override.
And adding on to that, you'll see RNC here mentioned as a resource multiple times. That doesn't necessarily mean the RAC as it exists is responsible to get the task done. They're responsible to explore their recommendation on the ultimate resource. In other words, it could be an individual person, it could be the formation of another committee, and of course, these things are brought to the board for approval. But that was the charter of the RAC. It identified issues that might be served by community involvement, either as individuals or as communities.
Yeah, and
So
also,
what I'm sorry, so there's a motion on the table. Does anyone want to second the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so Clement second it. Any discussion?
And so, I had a chance to review the document. And a very strongly negative reaction, both to the form and substance. This did not speak to me in the least. It was. Well, I won't rehash all of my comments. I shared them offline with the team. But I think ultimately, what bothers me significantly with this is the committee has no credibility. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean by we've got a bunch of crazy people on the committee doing it. We stood up a committee with the purpose of developing a strategic plan. And 3 months later, with no input from the board, we got master plan, bureaucracy, process, everything. We're blocking, we're going to prevent future boards from changing and shifting. We're going to know it all right now. Let's capture it. Done. Solve our problem. Now let's go forward to the plan. That can't be how it works.
It's a miserable.
I have observations. And that again, it just doesn't speak to me. It doesn't resonate with me. The words here are not tied to our place in time. They don't represent my shared vision for the community. It's abstract, it's artificial, it doesn't actually move anything forward in a meaningful way, and it puts a structure in place that will actually hinder progress. And so I am strongly opposed to adopting it this time. There are ways we can get there. There are ways we can leverage its working independence. There are also ways we can alter our engagement with our committees to make sure that we get the right things done and there's a commitment and alignment with what somebody's actually going to show up with. I would hate for Jim to go spend a whole bunch of time working on a engagement proposal. Put in a lot of effort, we need to do things. All compiled, show up to me, like, yeah, we don't care about that. Most definitely motion, not to do anything. Right? We can't have committees spontaneously generating their own work, showing up with some magnum opus of what they think is the right solution, and saying, we got it, adopt this, trust this, it's good. And so that's sort of where I'm at on this document, this moment in time.
Yeah, so I see your concern there. What I love about this document is if you notice, there's lots of points that talk about creating reiterative feedback loops. This document isn't set in stone and it's not meant to be written and never be changed. The board has the ability to change all of it. Specifically, the board only has the ability, or only the board has the ability after this to change the goals and the objectives. The tasks can be changed by the committees in conversation, working with the board as well. We can make a thing where they have to submit it to the board if you want, but it really is meant to be a living document and a basis to start from. Nothing's gonna be perfect in the beginning, but you start and you build something even better.
But you're starting with a giant overreach, that's the problem. You've got so many number ones that in theory, we're committing as a board to immediately go tackle every number one. And we add, to make up a number without counting 17 items that we're putting on a plate, and then the board has to think individually about and decide to approve each of those actions put in place before we waste everybody's time.
So a lot of
They do that. And so, like, we're trying to eat an elephant, boil the ocean, take the pick, we're throwing everything at it. Saying, there it is, let's go do it, strategic plan, and it just feels like a total.
No, I appreciate that, and I can see that because there are a lot of ones. Will you scroll down to section 11 for me?
Let
So
me interject. That is the definition of a strategic plan. Over a date point. That's what it's doing.
You're doing.
And by the way, you say no board input, there were 2 full-time members of the board on this effort. Okay, so it's not done without any board input.
So if you notice here on, is this 11? Yeah. So if you look at this, a lot of these things are already being done. So the strategic operations roadmap was meant to pull in everything that we are doing and things that we want to do in the future. So develop an annual plan, including a budget for revenue, expenses, and asset utilization. We already do that. We just wanted to make sure it was written down and that we were aware of who's doing it. Because when I got my board training, I felt like everything was everywhere.
You got
And
board training?
And I
have a lovely dinner.
And I didn't feel like I had a place where I could fully understand where things were. And that's what this is meant to be. So yes, there's a lot of things on it, but a lot of it is things that are already being done. And my hope for this is when a board member comes on, we give them a presentation and we can hold this to them and say, look, this is what Marcia does. Look, this is what Byron does. And when we have some residents who come in and say, we don't need staff members, what do they do all day? You can point to this and you can say, I'm the one who's running your financials. I'm the one who's doing this. I'm the one who's doing that. And it creates for me a lot of clarity that I feel like I have been lacking as a board member.
But that's a list. You
And
don't
have
need
we
to
seen them?
anything. Like, just right now, see, here's a list of what's happening, there's nothing to adopt.
Don't we have a RACI that does that, that provides a list of all of the things that the board is responsible for, and it says responsible, accountable, consultant, informed? We have that, right?
There's a difference between a to-do list and a strategic plan.
I was not
Strategic
given a reason, but
perspective.
there might be one.
It's the difference between a shopping list and a recipe. A to-do list is just a to-do list. It's just a wish list. I hope Santa brings me this. A strategic plan says, the goals that we have, which
Plans, you know, who was doing what and where it existed. So
Yeah.
that's a list, that's not a strategic plan.
when you put the tasks in to a progression that leads to objectives and goals, that becomes a strategic
But I
plan.
wasn't just advocating for the methodology.
But-
And we had a list when we were thinking of happening was what.
But a list, so here's the deal, the list to me would be exactly what you said. It would be set in stone, and with no change, exactly what has to be done. That's what a list is to me. This creates processes whereby things can change, they can develop, they can grow, they can become better. A list isn't gonna do what I want it to. This, for me, allows us to grow and understand who is gonna help us grow.
I'm sort of in the middle here. I think I really appreciate all of the time and effort that Clement and Kat and everybody who's worked on this put into this. I can also see Pete's viewpoint with regards to creating more bureaucracy, and I will tell you, as a general rule, this is a lot more that's being done than is typically done with any association. Because an association is a not-for-profit corporation, and it has very specific, the board has very specific duties and obligations that are set forth in the governing documents. And that is our list of things to do. And typically, I would say it's probably more reactionary than being proactive in doing things. Not always, but a lot of times it is. And just enforcing the documents in general. I'm really torn about this because I think it's a great effort and work product. But I'm really on the fence on how much this benefits us. But we could have more discussion about it.
And I think that's a valid input. I think this was sprung on the board a little too quickly. In most situations, when I do this kind of work, I'm dealing with the senior most levels of the organization all during the process. So the process takes several meetings.
And those are different types of entities too.
And I've done
That's like
all
easy.
kinds of nonprofits and all kinds of.
Not profits, but probably with senior leaders who are getting paid.
Yeah.
And they probably have somebody who then runs this is a portfolio of work, that there's some kind of portfolio program manager whose full-time job is to build project plans for 4 levels of detail below. That's why I struggle with it, is because the amount of management to make this thing useful. I don't know that volunteer board. If I knew before running that this was gonna be part of it, I probably wouldn't sign up for it.
What I'd say though is that we talk about things, the need for things, and it falls off. We have a meeting and we talk about it, and that's the last we hear of it. Things like the liaison with WCIP, that's in here. Things like an internal marketing plan to increase engagement in the community. That's something well thought out. That's in here. These are things that we should do. And we capture them. And if we don't get to them, okay, but they're still there. And we've taken all of our needs, aspirations, and put it in one place, so then we can pick off what's priority one for this week or this month or this quarter.
I think this week and month is part of the problem though, right? I mean, this board meets quarterly and people don't want to dedicate a lot of time.
Right.
Marcia.
Exactly.
I do.
And that's why the committee part of this is so important. The RSC, the SBC, SPVAC, maybe other committees, these will be formed in order to deal with these issues.
So spinning up more committees.
To get more work done.
But those committees then have work product that the board is going to be deeply invested in, wanting to make sure it's high quality, and then the goals, and then must be reviewed. There's it's like we don't actually multiply our efforts.
The solution you propose to things that we need to do is let's ignore them because it's less work.
It's let's actually pick the ones that are important, not create an artificial list. Laying out the future and finding and relying on the board to complete these activities, with all the hurdles to eliminate them and reprocess them. Let's make the list. Let's not act like it's a strategic plan, but let's actually prioritize it. So you know what, these are the big 3 things, or these things that committees want to do. You know what? Yeah, that's nice. We should take on. Let's actually commit to getting it done and go do it, and not wait everything for all eternity that we could possibly do and create this goal that actually won't benefit us. So if you don't own a lot, we're not going to get bigger, we're not going to more functions. The difference between operationally very good and operational excellence probably doesn't impact any of our lives. And so why act like we have to go do every single step to get there? We're not, that's not our here and now where we need to be.
That's an advocacy for crisis management. And I've seen it over and over. You react to the latest fire.
You don't, but you also don't act like you can see everything that's ever been added until it's planned again.
You can't.
I don't,
I'm sorry. I said everything.
you don't stop talking, but I think, we're starting to exaggerate it to your point, when that's starting to. Bob, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?
I'm with Patricia. I see both sides of this. I'm really hearing Pete's arguments against it. I'm on the fence and undecided.
So this is not meant to make more work for the board of directors, and nothing in here assigns anything to the board of directors that is not already assigned there. The hope for this is we were sitting in rec, and it was one of our first meetings, and everybody had something they were super passionate about. Amber wanted to improve our communications, wanted to work on our social media, wanted to help out with the emails. We had another person who was really passionate about fixing our gardening CCNRs because xeriscaping isn't up to date and we don't have native grasses. We're missing a lot of native plants. I think there are a lot of people who are passionate about individual things, but we felt like as rec, we can't just start spinning off random committees without a strong reason and without organization. And so that is why this SOR came about, is because there are people who are passionate about certain things, but we as 7 people aren't able to organize them in the way that in the best way. And so the hope of this is we can say, hey, we're looking at our CCNR, specifically the gardening section. We want to start a committee. If you want to be on the committee that overlooks this, it'll probably be one of like a 6-month committee where they look at it, fix things up. They come in, they fix it, they create their proposal, bring it before the board. That task is off the list. We've looked at that part of the CCNRs. Hopefully xeriscaping is better. Hopefully we have more native plants on our list. Amber wants
back to the task list then. I'm sorry to cut you off, but just what I'm hearing is this list of things, and Marcia does have a spreadsheet where there's the things that we need to go do, right? And she sends it to us weekly. So I think maybe help me understand how all these really wonderful ideas that you're talking about that you feel like Kaizen did that, we can't use what we already have and let Marcia continue to track it, because we pay her to do it, but we don't need to do any of
it's the why we do it. Is it just because someone approaches us and they're like, I want to change this and work on it? Or is it proactive? Hey, we have this goal and these are the items that we want to fix off of it. And this isn't really something we're expecting the board to manage. As the SPC chair, I will be the one managing this and working with Marcia to get her dates that she feels comfortable with. And I'm happy to take on the management of that. I'm not asking anything extra of y'all. We will just have people coming with awesome things like Jim did today with the Cove Committee, hopefully at our quarterly board meetings, and saying, look, a group of residents came together that was really passionate about this item. Here's our solution. Do you accept it? Like that, it was so beautiful to see it. Like that took so much off of our plates. Y'all, we've been talking about the gate since I've gotten on the board in August. I'm sure y'all talked about it before then. Every meeting. And he just found a solution for us. What did we have to do? What did we do? We showed up and we listened to his presentation. And that's hopefully how these committees are gonna work. They're gonna get these tasks. Maybe even we will come up with that as a board, we'll be like, oh, we're having this issue, and we'll send it out to a committee and take it off of our plates. So this isn't meant to add to us. I do get managing it might be a little bit more, but I'm not asking y'all to take that on. I am stepping up and saying, I am taking that on, and I am more than happy to do that.
So what if we, I don't know if this is a happy medium or not, but what if we agreed to accept this on a trial basis, maybe for 6 months? Kat's in charge, and I really love your passion. And just sort of see how it goes and what happens, with the idea that we'll revisit the issue in 6 months after the trial basis.
I go for that.
I like a trial basis.
Yeah, I'm with Bob and Trish, I can see all sides.
Everybody can be splits.
Yeah.
Well, he's not Switzerland, he's not Switzerland.
I think I like the 6 month idea, is kind of on basis, go.
So I would prefer, let's talk about a couple of different approaches. In this meeting, we could accomplish the same thing. And perhaps satisfy expectations a little bit more. I'm very uncomfortable with the notion of letting Kat read it, not because I don't think she's doing a great job, but it's advocating responsibility and putting on her the responsibility to make sure that the committees don't go waste all their committee meeting members' time because they're taking out activities that the board doesn't care about. It's prioritizing things that people keep wanting to bring up meetings that we're actually not going to act on because it's somebody's passion, they drive it. Like, all of that is, again, chartering a level of work that there's no buy-in to go complete. And I think that's fundamentally why we struggle, we waste a lot of time in workshops, we waste a lot of time reviewing documents, is because people are completing work that we're not actually brought in and having to get done. And they come back with their own version of the deliverable, like, it's broken, what are you trying to accomplish? It's what I was expecting, and this doesn't fix any of that, so we're not actually going to get any better as a result.
What if we added a stopgap then?
So let's talk about it. I guess let's take this conversation offline and let's talk about ways to bridge the gap a little bit differently and see if we can't find something that we can act on.
But what if we had a stopgap for the committee? Because where after their meeting, they say, these are actionable items that we're planning to work on. Is this what you want us to work on?
Okay, so I actually have a proposal for exactly that I can share with you.
Because I honestly thought CVAC was gonna start an RFP for the management company first. And so I understand where you're coming from, where you're like, committees bring things before the board that they're not. And so, I would be interested in adding a stopgap where it's like, before committees fully start putting time into things, they check with the board and make sure that's what they want to do. If we added a stopgap like that into this, would you be interested in that?
Yeah, I feel like this is overly populated and the language is not representative of our needs. The format's fun. It's beautiful that way. I think we could adapt it, but as it exists, and if the level of completeness present and lack of placeholders and all that, it's big and overcommitment, particularly when we're about to replace half the board. We're gonna sign them up to whatever our choices are.
Technically, I don't think we're supposed to open up to residents, but please, but go ahead, we're all good today.
So, the full disclosure, I'm on this committee. So I was a strategic planning manager at the Journal for 5 years. So I dealt with a 30,000 headcount organization, about $4 billion. So it took a couple of years, because I met with the group executives and vice presidents, to put something like this together. That was a full plan where this is just a roadmap. But I also did it for subdivision Michigan and had 200 homes, $1 million budget because of dollars. So it was a watered down version of this, but it was still detailed because the dilemma they had, which I kind of see here, is it was left to whoever had the loudest voice at the board meeting got their way. And there was a turnover on the board, it was the same thing, board members, so there was always a turnover. So it became board independent. And it was an integrated plan that touched all of the amenities. It was a survey, so it took years, 3 or 4 years to put this together. But it was, everyone bought into it.
Yeah.
But, again, you had representation on this committee. You had some people, some of us were strategic planning for their part of lives. So in the roadmap format that Clement has suggested here is kind of a generic format. So as Ken said, the goals are probably applied to any organization, but they are tailored to Belterra and to some extent the objectives. But all the stuff in the right two columns is time dependent. But it's up to the committee driving it. Our, back in Michigan, we had many committees. They did all the work of the board, so the board didn't have to do all the work. I mean, that was the objective, having all the committees. So the lemon, I think, Belterra is giving people to join committees.
And the
One of
hope
the
is,
things, that's one of the things in plan. So all I said in summary, I think this is a good start. It'll be amended as required. There are no dates of any of those topics either. So there's plenty of opportunity to tweak this, especially at the task level. Going forward.
well, and that's also the hope too, with creating some committees, is to have people to pull or to like. Kind of training to become board members, kind of seeing how things work behind the scenes for preparation for that.
Right, well, we still have a huge agenda
Yeah.
tonight, so there is.
Can I ask one question really
Yes,
quick,
of course,
Marcia?
yeah.
Do you know, or can you say how many people have, applied to be a board member?
I don't see why not. I have, got an email just a little bit ago. There's one.
One?
Mhm.
Okay,
It's 5 minutes, I'll ask.
That just came in while we've been in this meeting.
and I ask that because that really kind of speaks volumes with regard to community involvement too, and getting people to even be on the committees or to do anything if we only have one out of what's gonna be 3 open seats.
I personally reached out to 4 people
Yeah,
that I thought might be good board members.
yeah.
So one of my thoughts with this though, is these are gonna be more specific tasks. It seems like a lot, I think, to become a board member. RAC and SPVAC had very specific requirements, I felt like. But if we reach out to the community and say, who wants to help us fix our gardening list? I think we'll get a lot of people. A lot of these things, as we drill down specific committees or specific communication tasks or things, I think we're gonna find people who are very passionate about those things and who will be more likely to raise their hands for a small task that they feel able to do than to do something that they feel like is much bigger.
Especially if you don't just, something about mine, don't even call it a committee, just like a focus group.
Oh,
or
yeah,
something. Just, hey, we want you to read this document that we prepared, what else do you, personally, would you like to add, or just to run it by the community?
Can I move this on?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
there's a motion on the table, so I think we go to vote.
But
Switzerland's gonna have to either make a state.
6-month trial.
Do you want me to amend my motion to be like a
I
6
think
or
we
8 month
need to,
trial?
maybe we vote no, and then you can make a new motion with the amended. So let's vote on the motion that's on the table. All in favor, say aye.
I,
I thought we were going for this. Okay. Aye.
2 eyes.
All opposed, nay.
you want to amend it now?
Do I do a whole new motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I motion that we approve the SOR on a 6-month trial basis. Can I, or actually, can I pause that? Can I make it more like 9 months? Just coming up on the summer, I feel like might be hard to get people in. So could I make it a 9-month
You can do
trial?
whatever, you can do whatever motion.
Okay, so I motion that we approve the SOR on a 9-month trial basis.
I'll second.
Right, any discussion on that? My contribution to the discussion is that I'm not gonna sign up for something that I'm not gonna be here to see through. So I'm just gonna have that on the record, it's part of this discussion, so I'm not offending anybody with my ultimate vote, but I'm uncomfortable with something of this scale, even with 9 months, and I'm not gonna be able to support one. Any other discussion? All right, so all in favor, say aye.
I,
The ayes. All opposed, nay.
There.
No one abstained, right?
No.
Heard everybody? Okay.
You just got a whole bunch of time back, I guess.
Or there's another idea on the table, so there's openness to look at other forms. I know that's hard. Thank you for the robust discussion. All right, so Jamie, that's welcome committee.
Yeah, this will be quick and easy. The welcome committee, we've had a couple of new resident orientations doing very well. Like very well, we expect the next one hopefully to be well attended because the spring and summer when people move into the area. And welcoming committee has been active, it's a great group. I do have one action item, we have a revised welcome committee charter that I'd like somebody to make a motion for us to vote on. It's the one that's been, it's the welcoming committee has reviewed it and so I need a motion to
Can you summarize the changes?
I typed something up, you may have printed it before I got this typed up.
yeah.
Redrafting the welcome committee charter to be more consistent with other committee charters currently in use by the Belterra committees. Given that this is the only charter recorded as a statutory instrument, any revisions must also be recorded. Edits include removing committee members' names before the old one had signature blocks for all the committee members. To allow for longevity of the charter as members come and go, and adding a section addressing committee member social media activity as community representatives, much like the other charters as well.
Well, you can make the motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the revised welcome committee charter. Got I hear a second?
But seconds it, any discussion? I just have a question on it, well, I thought the social media activity was controlled by a completely separate document.
It is, but given that all the other charters kind of incorporate social media as like I don't know, it's like a reminder or whatnot for the committee members to see. It's a much more watered down version of it. So just like I said, to be consistent, I included it in there.
Yeah, I think it's good having a variety just to remind people that
Yeah.
they don't represent the board.
Right, so there's the vote on the table, any other discussion?
7 seconds.
Yep, 1 second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's take a deep breath, there's a lot of stuff to go through next. All right, so we're on to old business, there's a bunch of activity in between our meetings. So we now want to take a moment to ratify all of those. So we renewed the property and liability insurance as presented by Brady Chapman, Paul and Associates. At an annual premium of $23,316, and we purchased an environmental policy with a $1 million limit and a $25,000 deductible at a cost not to exceed $4,000 for the period of 4/1/2023 to 4/1/2024. And we're funding that from our operating budget. We decided to engage Land Care for the February 2023 ice storm cleanup of association and property at a cost of $29,130.08 payable from our operating budget. There were revisions to the amenity rental agreement specifying the intended uses and addition of rental specification details. There was engagement at Radiant Plumbing for the 2022 freeze repairs. Was that should be the 23 freeze repairs?
No, that was
The 2022 freeze repairs.
Christmas.
Yep, thank you. At a cost of $23,581.92. Payable from operating and also partially covered by the insurance claim. There was an appointment to the strategic planning committee for member Clement Chuck, Jim Maziak, Steve Hoxie, James Howard, Nevitz Brown, and Dan Me. Becky, I sincerely apologize if I butchered names. There was engagement of Mastic Construction for the step-co repairs to the front of the rec center for $6,030 payable from operating budget. And there was the adoption of the vendor evaluation worksheet for the management, tracking, and reporting on the performance of our pool maintenance vendor. We have a motion to ratify the aforementioned actions taken by the board after the prior meeting, but before this meeting.
So moved.
Trish, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bob. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
I guess I do have one question for Marcia. So I know that stucco repair was partially investigated because we didn't know what the cause was. What was the comeback from that?
They were not able to discern exactly what the cause was, but there was a water leak back there, some of the busted pipe. There's not evidence to substantiate, including that it was leak. Unfortunately.
But it was fully fixed. So there was nothing
They
else
started
under there.
painting it this morning, I think, so it should be, they may have to come back to another second coat tomorrow, or depending.
I was a little worried that there'd be like, you know, when you open up a wall, there's like all issues you didn't know about.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah,
glad
it
there
was
was
just-
not.
It was just a couple of repairs, so thank goodness.
Right, next item of old business was there's the Belterra Maryland facility use agreement. There's some revisions that they requested. And that includes confirming the swim meet dates, eliminating the pool usage language for stroke clinics, allowing the Marlins to store items in the pool pump room as they've done in the past. And clarifies the lifeguard requirements. So may I have a motion to approve the revised Belterra Marlins facility use agreement?
I motion.
Thank you, Jamie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Make that motion carries unanimously. On to new business. So you want to talk about pest control?
Sure. So we've been receiving some reports of ants and rodents at the retreat at San Saba. So mostly ants and then other just little creepy crawly things. So looked at the contract and the existing contract for pest control did not extend to the retreat at San Saba. So I asked them to provide me a quote for adding that in. In the process, also, we received reports from the pool maintenance company of finding some of the four-legged long-tailed creatures in the pool pump room. So asked them to add on rodent bait boxes for around that area. So the proposal presented expands the existing service agreement with Magna Pest Solutions to include the retreat at San Saba and 10 for the same type of service we have here at the rec center, and adding 10 rodent boxes at the pool pump room. So that's kind of the gist of it.
All right. May I have a motion to accept the proposal from Magna Pest Solutions for expansion of the current pest control agreement to include the retreat at San Saba and rodent control for an additional cost of $1,560 annually payable from our operating budget?
So moved.
Thank you, Trish. May I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Bob, any discussion on this?
Clarifying question, does this contract synchronize to our existing contract, or does it exist out of phase?
It would synchronize to the existing contract.
Are we paying a prorated rate this year, or the contract?
He gave the proposal in a monthly amount, and then I just calculated it as an annual amount, so for new kind of what the max out of pocket sort of thing would be for a year.
Great question. Any others? All right, so all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Great, second piece of new business, let's talk about recycling and trash cans. There was a really great ask from the town hall to look at the timing of violation notices going out, as CCMC has gotten a lot more proactive with that. There's a lot more courtesy notices, and it was brought to this board's attention that when folks like to have their bins cleaned, or if their teenager is lazy, you know, the same day getting the cans back out of sight is feeling a little unrealistic with the way life is these days. So there's just an ask for this board to take another look at that and provide different direction to management with the leniency that we wanted to have with trash and recycling bins. So that was the ask coming out of the town hall. Is there any discussion, or is there any motion anybody would like to make about that?
I included the CCNR article on the screen just so you knew what that says with regard to trash cans. It does not specify a certain date or
So
anything.
nothing.
Yeah, no, which most governing documents that I'm used to actually states has to be returned out of you by such and such, you know, within a number of hours after 48 hours or something, whatever. This one does not, but that works to, you know, we know it's hard to change CCNR, so it's nice that there's not something about here.
I mean, as I was driving out this morning to take my daughter to preschool, I saw quite a few trash cans out on my street. But I also saw the lemon bins guys there and they were actively cleaning them. And so it is harder because that would be I don't know how often, but that would be a regular letter that these folks would be getting, and they'd regularly be reaching out to y'all saying, just our lemon bins again, getting cleaned.
And it would be nearly impossible, and I would actually say it would be impossible for us to be able to keep track of who has lemon bin service and who doesn't.
And that's gonna change.
No, it's gonna change, exactly. So, and it is tough that the trash cans are picked up on on Wednesdays, because a delay in it means we're sending violation letters on Fridays, and that always just feels kind of icky. But it is what it is, timing can't be changed.
So we have, I mean, there could be a motion, or, yeah, we don't have to take action, so this was just an ask from the community to talk about this.
My input is that that the violation notes are rare. In other words, you'd have to have a situation where somebody was notified of a violation on the rare circumstance that the garbage wasn't picked up on Wednesday but spilled over until Thursday. So you've got kind of rare and rare, and when that person gets the note, they can easily call and say, look, this is what happened. I wasn't feeling well. It was raining too hard, whatever. And the folks in the office can just remove that violation from the record. Having said that, I understand that people can still get upset by getting these things. And Marcia offered, although it's with some pain, that maybe the violation tour that they do be postponed until Friday, in which case, what if it's out there Friday, when you're supposed to have it in by Wednesday, then that's enough leeway. And I don't know that we need a policy for that, but just have it happen, and then nobody gets a violation note unless the thing is out there on a Friday.
I know one thing as we talked about that Marcia said sometimes it's not possible for them to do Fridays, but I do think maybe where possible, do your rounds on Friday, but if it's not possible with your schedule, do them Thursdays, but if we can do them on Fridays, I think that would be more helpful. And I understand some cases are rare, but there are also some set ones, like lemon bins comes on Thursday, so they have to leave them out.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
If it's on Thursdays as late as possible, but not do the drives first thing in the morning.
Right. She usually would does them like Thursday afternoons, and if we moved it to Fridays, it would be probably first thing in the morning Friday. Because by the end of, well, also, if you've ever received a violation letter, you know that if you have an email address on file with us, as soon as we click upload, you get that email with that violation letter. It also has to get mailed, you know, per law, but people don't like to get a violation letter at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, and then by the time they open their email and see it, then the office is closed, and then they stew all weekend. So that's part of the reason why we try to avoid that on Fridays. But as long as we do the first thing in the morning, I think that would give people time to see their email and be able to reach out to us and not have a whole weekend where they're doing. I mean, it is a courtesy reminder. If you do get a violation letter, it is literally what it says. It's a courtesy reminder. We're not trying to be mean. But
there is no fine or penalty attached.
Exactly.
So my understanding is we don't need a motion, we're just asking management to delay rounds to Fridays whenever possible.
We can do that.
Okay. So can we just make sure that's in the notes?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, well, since you're typing, I guess I can talk about the water replacement of your baby.
I can, no, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is being recorded, anything I miss, I go back and listen to it again, so that's okay.
Well, thank you.
So rec center water heater replacement, well, this has been fun. You would think something as simple as a water heater would be pretty slammed dunk. No. So I'll read what I typed to put my thoughts together here. The rec center water heater is 19 years old and is not working. It is intermittent, but for all intents and purposes, it's not working because it keeps starting and stopping. Given the rec center is relatively small with low hot water usage, we are able to utilize a tankless option if we so choose. The meeting folder provided to the board includes proposals for both options. However, given that a large tank model could not be installed without removing the HVAC units in the hall closet. In fact, let me move the slide here and I've actually included a picture of what. Yeah, I don't know, but that's literally where the water heater is behind the HVAC units. Isn't that fun? Let's see here. Without removing hall closet, proceeding with the tankless unit is ideal. While the HVAC units could be removed, the additional cost is prohibitive, which is why you saw one of those bids when Kat and I were texting a little bit about it. You know, why is the tank water heater option $31,000 so much more than the others? And that's because it's being having to remove all those HVAC units.
Well, and also the Reliant is, their 15K one is expecting us to pay somebody else to move the HVAC.
Correct.
And that was something, because I texted her, I was like, why is Radiant 31K and Reliance 15K?
Exactly.
And so.
So yes, I get into that. While the three companies provided bids, management recommends eliminating ADC Home and Commercial Services as they were the least confident. Basically, he didn't give me the warm fuzzies. He was like, yeah, I could, I don't know, about this project. Between the final two bidders, Reliant and Radiant, very similar, but management recommends proceeding with Radiant for a single tankless unit at $13,593.79 as their bid includes all work to achieve the replacement. And I asked him 2 different ways to confirm this includes everything. Are you sure? To achieve the replacement. Reliant will not include additional costs such as accessing the existing water heater in the small space, installing the needed 120-volt power source, roof repairs resulting from venting modifications because it's a different type of water heater, and extensive drywall repairs for pulling the old unit out through the wall. That's what they want us to do. They want us to cut a 5x5 hole in the wall on the other side of to the left down the hallway.
Rather than messing with the HVAC system.
Correct. Yeah, that's an option. So yes. So let's see here. Although only estimated, the addition of these repairs could result in the total cost being $5,000 or more over Reliance quote. And that was me texting, like, I got that, hey, if I gotta do this, this, and this, what are you looking at spending? And he's like, it's a lot of money. Although despite Reliant quoting 2 tankless units, or 1 tankless unit is sufficient for the rec center's hot water use. Finally, Radiant's warranty is better. So would anyone like to make a motion to accept the proposal from Radiant for the installation of 1 tankless water heater at $13,559.79? That is including tax payable from reserves because it's a reserve expense.
Can I ask a question now or do I need to wait? So what all do we have that's getting hot water? Essentially the showers and the sink.
The showers, the sinks, and we do have, no, we don't have a dishwasher here, but we have a sink in the kitchen. And then there's a sink in Byron's office that we never use. So you think about like a tankless water heater that would normally go in your house. And then with me, I probably use more water in my house in a day than this place does.
Yeah.
I see at least during the day, and then nights I've worked late, like maybe somebody showered in the women's restroom 3 times a week. It's not a lot of water usage, hot water usage. Otherwise, if it was a larger facility like gyms, the YMCA, that kind of thing, you're gonna need 2 or maybe even 3 tankless units, so we can get by with 1.
What's the lifespan of the tankless water heater?
Tankless water heater, you're looking at 20 to 25 years. They said the existing tank one we have, it would have been 20 years. I'm like, wow, we really got our money's worth out of the developer's money without that anyway.
Did Raven mention any annual maintenance for the tankless?
They did not. These companies do offer preventative maintenance, just like, because Radiant that's a company that also did our HVAC units, the 3 of the 4 that we replaced last year. So I can definitely inquire with them about a PM process.
There is usually annual maintenance that needs to go along with the tankless water heater to keep it working effectively.
Yep.
Also, do we know what capacity you specified for the water heater, and if it was commercial or residential unit?
It's, I had a link on the Google Drive for the actual, unit he is or
It's at the bottom of the
suggesting,
matrix.
yeah, not in and being. Pull it up and I'll put it on the screen here. It's definitely better than the one I have at home.
Are you happy with the work Radiant did on,
I'm very happy, yeah, they were quick and they were efficient. I was actually really impressed. I took a picture of the day they showed up to do the HVAC and they had 4 vans out here, crews of guys that just kind of like swarmed and just super efficient out of the home.
We're on the propane in here like the rest of the neighborhood, right?
Correct.
So while it is $20,000 cheaper, about how much would you think the annual maintenance plan would be? Let me guess.
So they should have annual, oh, right, you know, we plug the tank water heater into the, so that for preservation, they can do something with it.
Should be pretty apples to apples. So we go to-
Okay,
we just might need to, either between meetings or the next meeting, be looking to approve some kind of maintenance contract, because I don't have that today.
It's gonna be somewhat off topic, but it probably bears. Do we have a soft water system in this building?
No.
Have we ever had the water evaluated?
Nope. Not to my knowledge. I haven't since I've been here.
So the tankless water heaters, because all piping on the inside is so much smaller than the tank,
Mhm.
are a lot more susceptible to scale formation, which increases flow and efficiency.
Mhm.
That's what the annual maintenance helps to prevent.
Right.
But when I put a tankless in my house that froze 18 months later and had to get replaced again, I had to upgrade to a water softener system to keep it flowing efficiently.
Really? Yeah, they didn't mention neither companies, I'll say neither, but either two, because ABC is kind of but super confident, but they did not mention anything about hard water here being an issue or.
We've got horribly parts of it here. They all get filtered through limestone that.
Mhm.
so should we run this back with those questions? Because
Yeah, we can.
I'm not sure how much a water softener would be.
Probably a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And
think
then you need plumbing.
more information.
I mean, it's not a whole, it's just like one of those saltwater tanks, I mean, we did that for what, like 3 or 5 grand maybe when we moved in our house.
Yes, I installed my building.
Oh, nice.
So we're gonna see your.
This is why I was involved. We're gonna put it in the weekend and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can hold off and I can go and ask Sean these, additional questions and then circulate it back to you guys via email.
So when you say the current one is running sporadically, how sporadically are you talking about?
One day I go wash my hands in the water's warm, the next day it's not.
Every other shower.
Shower.
We do have people use
So maybe it would be in our best interest to make a motion, including evaluation of the water, if soft water is necessary, and then if it is, we can go back on an offline vote to cover that.
Yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
so the idea is try the tankless, and if the water pressure isn't where we want it to be, then add a softener.
Well, the pressure is gonna be
Yeah,
good. Got water pressure in the building, it's gonna be, we need to have the water evaluated for hardness and see if it's gonna negatively impact the tankless water heater performance.
Or what would they recommend if we do have hot water short of installing a water softener? Is it a PM that they need to come monthly and flush or do whatever they need to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounded like a motion.
So I think, yeah, there's, so I motion to, I need the. I think I understand what you're saying, let me try. But I don't know the dollars, right there. So I motion to approve the proposal from Radiant Plumbing for one tankless water heater for $13,559.79. Contingent upon their evaluation of the hardness of our water. And if we would incur additional expenses to truly make the tankless more efficient.
Yeah. A second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Awesome.
Right on to the financial review.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Marcia's been doing a lot of work, so we can read a little bit to give her. As of March 31st, 2023, our total assets in Belterra were operating of $976,642.32, with a reserve of $252,111.11. And section 15, the code reserve was $152,532.01. And their capital and the capital improvement fund is $254,086.06. Year-to-date operating income is up 19.7% from what was budgeted due to the insurance claim proceeds received earlier in the year. The total operating expenses are 10% more than was budgeted for the year. This is primarily due to the February 2023 freeze cleanup, and as such, these unaudited financials reflecting the year-to-date operating net income of $85,395.72 after all transfers. Currently, the Belterra Reserve account is currently approximately 29% funded, utilizing the 2023 reserve study update to be accepted later in the meeting. Management and I have reviewed the updated study and will present our recommendations for an interfund transfer to increase the reserve and capital funds. Any questions on that?
No, great job.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the 2023 research study update as presented.
I still motion. Wait, did you motion or?
I'm
I second.
So Kat seconded, any discussion? Okay, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries unanimously.
Interfund transfers. So as I just stated, the reserve fund is currently funded at approximately 29%, and we had a huge amount of money in our operating fund, which is not typically how HOA wants to do business. So we work with management, really management working a little bit with me, to evaluate the current operating reserve and capital improvement cash assets and determine if any excess operating capital could be moved to bolster the financial position of the reserve capital improvement funds. We included in the board packet information on three options: option 1, option 2, and option 3. Option 1 would move a chunk of change from operating to reserves, and would get the reserve fund, would get our reserve account funded at 70%. Option 2 would move more money out of operating and into reserves, which would fund the reserves 80%. Option 3 would do the same thing, but fund the reserve study at 90%. Basically, after we do a transfer, that would leave 3 to 4 months of money in the operating fund, which is industry standard. And the bulk of the money after that would go into the capital improvement balance or capital improvement fund. So the main difference between the three is that the 70% would give us more in capital improvement. The 80% and 90% would give us slightly less in capital improvement after the transfer is made. Mark and I were talking about this. Industry standard for a reserve study is about 70% funded. We both feel comfortable with the 80% funded option, because if we do have an unforeseen reserve expense that comes early, that leaves us a little bit more of a cushion. If we fund the reserves to 70% right now, and something big happens, we have to take money out of it, and we're immediately below our threshold of being in a good place. So my recommendation, and I believe Marcia's on board with this, is that we would transfer $406,211 to reserves, which would be option 2, leaving us 80% reserves.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I second.
Second.
Any discussion? I have a couple questions. So on the reserve study I was reading, it said, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So you want to be at least 70%, but then is 90% just like overkill generally or overkill?
So in a perfect world, you would be 100% funded and everybody would have, you know, every single dollar that you could possibly need ready to go. In our industry, we say if you're at least 70% funded, that means that you are at low risk for having to special assess a residence in case something unplanned happens. So would, you know, the very fiscally conservative mind me would love for you to be 100% funded, but the board has other goals, you know, with capital improvement and things like that. So it's reasonable to say, you know what, let's go ahead and pick a different threshold rather than 100% funded that still accomplishes the same goal of making sure that the association is fiscally responsible, but also leaving a little bit of room to move some money over for capital improvement. So that's why, you know, at least if you're 70% funded, I can tell you that my internal, like the CCNC KPIs and our goals and whatnot, some of the things that I'm benchmarked on is making sure your association is at least 70% funded. If I have to put that as a no and putting it, then it reflects poorly on me. So that is how important this is, you know, to make sure that I'm doing my job, advising you guys appropriately. I just like 80% better because, like Bob said, if something happens and we go, whoa, this broke much sooner than we anticipated, we can absorb that blow, and we don't fall below that 70% funded. So you might fall into the 70s, but you're still healthy.
And right, shame on me for not looking at the reserve study in greater detail, for approving it, but when the kids' comments about comes to water heater and HVAC units are relative to what we just spent. So erring on the side of caution and putting a little bit more money away is likely wise.
I like that 80%.
So we had, this year, our operating expenses have been higher than planned. And with the transfers at the 80% level to reserve and then that balance shown there to capital, that leaves us pretty industry standard is in operating. Are we comfortable with that, considering like every year now we've had weather events, and it feels like we've been operating. So when we say we're at 3 to 4 months, is that 3 to 4 months of the trailing 3 to 4 months, or the average of the last 12 months?
It's 3 to 4 months. What I used was the budgeted numbers for 2023. We took the budgeted expenses, because it ebbs and flows, but and divided by 12, and then times, you know, the 3 to 4 months to get to garner exactly on average how much do we need to. But you're right, that's on the budgeted anticipated amount.
But the operating is our contracts and things. Like if there was a weather event or something where things broke, that could come out of reserves. Is that correct?
Fortunately in Texas, there are no laws prohibiting an association from tapping into reserve funds for things that are not contemplated in the reserve study. Now, there are states that are incredibly regulated, and we will likely end up there. It's just a matter of Texas being, you know, 5 to 10 years behind other states. But because there's state regulation elsewhere in our industry, it's frowned upon. Unless it is something, reserves is not just a savings account like you might have at home where you go, oh yeah, I've been saving up for this vacation, you know, I'll go take it. You're saving up for capital repairs and replacement of huge assets in the association. So to just arbitrarily, you know, go and say, oh, we'll just take it out of reserves, that grossly will affect your reserve fund standing. If you take $100,000 out for freeze damage repairs that aren't covered by insurance, you're pulling money away that's allocated to replace pool pump motors. It's like every dollar in the reserve account is earmarked for something pursuant to the reserve study. Now, your capital improvement, that's different. There's no, I mean, that's something that this board, as in the Belterra Community Association Board, not necessarily the people in these chairs, at some point in the past, decided to create, to put back into the community. But there's not.
Not earmarked for anything.
Correct, yeah. It's not set aside, you know.
Okay, so then I guess I was viewing it wrong, because I felt like putting it into reserves, you know, if the pool pump was gonna go out in 2 years, we have a freeze, and we have to replace it 2 years early. In my mind, it just restarts the clock. And it's kind of covered, does that make sense? Because then in 2 years, you're not replacing the pool pump, you're
And
just,
it does, and that
So-
example, yes, that is, if a pool pump gets damaged. Or, you know, dies, let's say the pool motor dies and it's 2 years earlier than what we anticipated, you should absolutely use reserve dollars for that. I'm talking about things that weren't contemplated in the reserve study, like take, for example, freeze landscaping that's freeze damaged.
oh, okay, gotcha.
That's
So,
not contemplated.
okay,
Mhm.
And if it's something breaks earlier than planned, we likely don't have enough in the reserves to cover it, because it assumes the reserve study assumes a longer life on the things. So,
You may be robbing Peter to pay Paul
yeah.
right at that time.
Sorry, Peter.
Sorry. You always get.
So does it do anything for us if we were to fund reserves at 80% as you recommend, but don't move as much into capital? Do we want to leave a bit of a bigger cushion for us in operating cash, or does it not matter? Because we can take from capital and put it back into operating if we need.
Then you could absolutely do that. You could just make a motion that says move the appropriate amount of cash to fund the reserves to 80% and leave the operating and just kind of see how the rest of the year pans out, and then make a bulk transfer of anything deemed excess at the end of the year
Into capital improvement.
into capital improvement,
Yeah.
or leave it.
And I haven't made a motion to that transfer yet, so that would be.
There you go. Mhm.
Just for only the reserve. Good point.
Yeah, nicely done.
Okay. Well, any other discussion then on the motion on the table to fund our reserve at 80%? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
So,
Okay, so that motion carries unanimously.
So the other part of this.
anybody dying from heat right now? Right again. It's comfortable. Yeah.
So in the interest of being thorough, there was gonna be we're gonna discuss another transfer from the operating expense to the capital improvement fund. Along with the 80% that we just did to reserves, you have the option of transferring $139,426.13 to capital improvement. Or we can leave it where it is and address that at the end of the budget here.
My thinking is, we don't have anything on, well, I guess we're gonna get to that thing about the sport court, but we already have. I mean, we have 260 grand in capital improvements right now, and we don't have really that many projects funded.
And the sports court is not going to cost that.
That's a good point. We can wait, we figure that out, and then, yes, let the dust fall a little bit. Okay.
Any motions for, no?
So we'll just let it ride and address it later.
And one debate on it. Yeah, but maybe I'll put some.
Maybe in the evening.
This was good for us right now. The code is still ongoing.
There's too many, there's too many variables right now to make any motions to that.
We're still waiting on the auditor to get back to us.
We'll try to get that on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, should have definitely done
Yeah, this is probably one of our meatiest agendas, I feel like, in a while.
it. Great.
Yeah.
3 hours, all right, let's see if we can bring this home. All right, Kat, what you got?
All right, so this is a basketball court to multi-use court conversion. So a few years ago, we used to have a Belterra basketball group on Facebook, and they would meet up every Saturday, Sunday. It'd be either Saturday or Sunday morning on the weekends and play basketball. And they'd show up it didn't rain the night before, but from the morning dew, it was too wet to play. They didn't feel comfortable running and playing on the court. So they started just going over to High Point on the days that it was too wet. And now the Belterra basketball group is the High Point Hoops group on Facebook. And our residents are driving, and I think some High Point people have joined that as well now since it's over there. But that's where they've been going and playing basketball now, and they're still actively doing it. And once I joined the board, it was something that came to mind, like, we should make it so our sports court isn't unusable just from morning dew. And then the idea of turning it into a multi-use court conversion came because we had our most previous amenities survey, people wanted a pickleball court. But due to just essentially monetary restrictions and different things, we were unable to do that. So the hope here, we've got it broken down in a few different ways. So we could take this, essentially take the tiles off that are on now and put new tiles on with the basketball court painting and then racquetball in the middle. The posts would be removable. They would have like holes that then are covered when the fence is taken off. But so that's one option, and that came in at $29,000. Another option is to expand the existing basketball court slab. So we make it wider. And then we can put in 2 pickleball courts on either side with still basketball in the middle. And my church has done this, and they have a league that does pickleball every Friday night, and it works really great. And so that's coming in at $64,000. Then just in the, summertime as well, but wintertime, it gets dark so early. And so it'd be really nice to have lighting, so that way people can play past 6 p.m. It would be nice. So people who work, who maybe want to come out and play basketball, can play basketball when it's dark in the mornings. So that came in at $8,650 for the lights, but that doesn't include the wiring for the electricity to the lights. So we tried to get an electrician out, and essentially the electrician kind of bailed on us, but
No, he didn't.
oh, he did come?
Yeah,
Oh,
he
okay.
did come. He came, but he wasn't able to get a response back from his trencher in time to be able to finalize the quote before the meeting tonight. So that's why I texted you earlier and said, because I said, okay, bro, that's cool, but can you give me a ballpark? Like, what are we looking at, so that we at least know going to this meeting what our worst case scenario we're looking at.
So that provide and install for $8,650, that's without wiring?
Correct.
So they're installed, but they are not operational?
Because they're not electricians. We still have to get an electrician to run the power from this building out there.
Oh, no.
That's all it costs for just like,
Yeah.
it seems really low.
Well, you're not gonna, I was shocked by the electrician bid. It's $15,000 to $25,000 to run electricity out there.
It's so hard to get the power. He was like, I don't even know how the heck I'm gonna do this, but all right. So, yeah.
And of course, we will get multiple bids. That one person isn't
Yes.
who we're gonna go with. It was more to get a not to exceed this amount was the idea. And so then the other part is, so we have these hand cranks. So our basketball hoops set at 10 feet. They can go down to 7.5 feet, but only if you have a handle. The handles are in the office. So between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, you can modify the height of the basketball hoops, but you can't the rest of the time. So you might show up to shoot hoops over the weekend, and the hoops at 7.5 feet, you're a 6-foot man wanting to play basketball, or young kids come and they want to shoot hoops. They've got a 10-foot hoop. So the idea here is to solder those handles on, so that way people can just show up and move the height of the hoop on their own. The issue with the handles, though, when they installed it, when you're turning it, your hand grinds on the fence every time you spin it. And I mean, you do a lot of spins to get it to move up and down. And so people will push up against the fence, which is why the fence, if you've noticed, is starting to curve in that spot, because people are pushing the fence so that way their hand's not grinding against it. So part of this, will you scroll down just a touch, please? Oh, just up a little bit. right here is when they redo the flooring, they're gonna take the basketball posts out and move them in just a touch, and then put the new flooring in and make the line, like the 3-point line, the free throw line, all of that with where the new hoops are. But that way people's hands aren't getting scratched, or people aren't trying to push the fence out as they are moving the hoops up and down. So yeah, those are kind of the different options. I have a way that I'd like to see it go, or like one that I prefer, but honestly, I'd just be happy to get flooring that's not wet, so that way people can play basketball, lights, so people can come and play, and the handles on there, so people can move them up and down.
Do you want to mention the restock credit?
Oh yeah, and we get a restock credit from our original deposit of $5,400.
Because we had to, they had found that from the deposit we made on this project, because they had already ordered the lights. They charged us a restocking fee, so they're willing to take that cost off of whatever we choose to go with, if you choose to go with something.
Yeah.
What's the total for everything?
Well, this has got multiple options. Yeah,
Yeah.
If we do number 2, you wouldn't do number 1.
right.
Yeah.
So my first question about number 2 is.
Oh, yeah.
Are we gonna encroach on the vacant land? And if so, is it gonna put it over that gas line that killed the pickleball courts? Furthermore, Dripping Springs is probably gonna require the permitting, which is gonna come with the geotechnical evaluation, which killed our pickleball court, because that was an additional $90,000+ just to get that survey.
Okay, so that is where I did ask the question of how much for the survey. Because I wasn't sure if that was WCID's, because I wasn't here for that portion of it. That wasn't WCID's requirement. That was the city of Dripping Springs.
That's Dripping Springs is required.
Fox told me that, I just found this out literally this week, that when we were gonna, or as part of Belterra getting, our community association getting that easement, that they had to pay for a site survey.
Who's
And I
they?
said,
Wicked.
yeah, and I said, well, this is the first time hearing of this. And he's like, yeah, we had to pay $2,000 to do that site survey. And I said, well, why wouldn't you give us that? Well, no one's asked for it. I
And
was
that
like,
gave us the location of that gas.
so we move forward, we can, I mean, well, regardless, plus, he's already told me this 3 times, so I'm gonna say it, is that, if he's kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit, because he won't just come out and say it because he's just one board member. But that if we were to just, scribble something on the back of an envelope, I'm quoting him there, that to submit for whatever we're doing, because you have to go through the submittal process of WCID also, that we wouldn't have to incur so much cost, because their engineering firm, which is one of the engineering firms that provided us a bid before, would do all the legwork. Now, he's not committed this, has not, so I mean, it's hearsay at this point. But it does sound like we have to, their expectation is we have to go and talk to them and ask them as a board what they would be willing to do.
So you're saying they might pay for an engineering report for us to build a pickleball court? Potential, I don't
And
know.
it
if I'm
could
gonna-
take a year. I mean, we've gone down this path.
Yeah,
I want number 2 so bad, but I feel like it's Groundhog's Day and we say, yes, we're gonna do number 2, and then a year later, we finally realize we can't.
but do we not own the land next to the basketball court? Because the expansion isn't that much bigger.
How big would it be? I don't know how much is like.
And the current is 40 by 85. Oh, wait,
So it's adding 20 feet of width.
yes.
Add 20 by
And on which side?
Was thinking.
So I was thinking it would go, honestly, I don't really, it can go either way. But I was thinking toward the parking lot in case we wanted to do anything between the basketball court and the baseball field. I don't want to encroach on that side. But if we don't own that land, we can go the other way.
Gonna go do a review.
Go piece it off.
I think we're the parking lot, all 3. That was the baseball loan.
Yeah, but we don't, that's not part of the motion. That doesn't have to be part of the motion. We can discuss that with them and we can decide like which way to go later. I'm not set on that.
But that's discussing about that's fine. I was just agreeing with Jamie, this is our legacy moment, right? Because we've been trying for 3 years to improve the sport report, but.
Well, might discuss later, wouldn't be us, it would more be Marcia and him out there. And him going, we shouldn't go towards the parking lot because I'd have to charge an extra however much for grading, we should just go this way. Like, I think we just kind of leave that one up to the expert would be my feeling.
You never got an idea, a firm idea on where that gas line is, Marcia?
We need that survey.
We
Yeah.
have an idea, but without
But we
specific
don't know if it's
measurements.
within that 20-foot footprint if we go to the east.
But if we just have to ask for it, if we move forward with this, then we just go the way it's not, if we have to, right? Because they have it, you said,
He told me they have it, no.
we just have to ask. But I mean, either way would be good, because.
In my mind, we could take item 1, item 3, possibly item 4. And less than an act on with pretty low effort, right, that falls into maintaining an existing amenity. Low barrier to an act on that. And we start talking about massive construction and tear down and kind of big access to the rest of the facilities that might be needed for a further strategic plan, starting with a groundhog day of what do we do, what do we need, all of those things. And so at the risk of spending, only getting a year or so out of our $30,000, $40,000 investment, take the win, go resurface the deck, let's go make it more usable in its existing form, drop a pickleball court in the middle, and see if people actually show up and play. And then we can talk about.
Because you can expand it, right? It's not, we're not preventing that expansion to happen.
We're most, probably a little bit of money. In theory, it was paid for enjoyment or a test that people didn't actually care.
So I don't know what goes into repainting the tile is the only thing, is I don't know how well that paint is gonna wash off, because you know, these tiles last for 20 years, and so we're like,
Manufactured that way.
so if we ask them to come in later and expand it, I don't. But look at those tiles, I don't wanna spend another $20,000 on tiles in 5 years.
That's the cost of the project, if you pay more, that's part of the one that really should, like it. And what we need, the enjoyment will occur in the near term, that's trivial.
And I'm with Pete on this one also. I love number 2. I would love to be able to just do number 2. But number 2 is getting awfully close to what we tried to do 3 years ago. But one of the other things that I think we've been discussing recently, reevaluating, is putting in another amenity survey out to the neighborhood, because that hasn't been done since what, 18 or 19. Evaluating what the need, what the wants of the community are. We're talking about dog parks. I mean, the master plan community picture thing on our website. We got so many other options that we can be doing in this spot. I like Pete's idea of 1, 3, and 4, getting it more usable, testing it. That leaves a little bit more in capital improvements for future projects, and we're going to be able to get input from the community again to see where we're going to move forward on all the rest of the stuff.
The only downside that I see to that, and I'm not saying I disagree, is just if you're playing pickleball, then takes up the entire court.
Yeah,
And so the hope was kind of that, you know, one group could be playing pickleball, one group could be doing basketball, but kind of, and that's not the end of the world, it's better than what we have. Is there any?
Why we wanted 2 courts.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, and we tried, so we're fairly certain that we would have to get an engineering report for 20 feet concrete, because that is, if that's the holdup.
I'm not an expert. I'm not going to say fairly certain on that. I just know that was one of the things that they were hitting us good wall for.
For some reason, I thought that was the Wickeds request because of their stuff. I didn't realize it was strictly.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Alternately, I think we all like number 2, right?
Is there a
What
way,
if we voted on number two? Contingent on finding out more information about the site survey and if engineering is gonna be done, need to be done, and what that cost would be in addition to the 64,000.
and then if that stuff doesn't have to be done, do item 2, 3, and it's actually 5.
It's already, it's fine.
No, you're fine.
5 meetings.
I actually asked them to remove 4, so this is an older bid, because 4 is like really confusing and would look funky. I feel like not the aesthetic.
Expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we remember what the originally approved project was?
The daughter?
Yeah.
Well, it's at least $140,000.
Yeah, I thought it was 140, and then they were gonna throw 90,000 in geotechnical.
No, we didn't approve that, though. We had a bid for that. I think what you're asking about what the board originally approved.
That's what they
Plan, we didn't have the budget.
No,
No, we didn't, right? We didn't, no.
No,
The
it
original, it was like
that.
I think the original bid was 17 grand, and the question asked was, well, will it double the cost to get 2? And it didn't double the cost. It was well on that. And then it got really expensive with all these surveys and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I'm just using Excel to add this all up because we don't.
But we don't, it's, how do you approve number 3 without understanding the cost of doing the electrics? I feel like we need to leave that one off for now.
So I was gonna ask for approval with a cap of 25 grand for electrical, and then we're gonna bid it out and try to get obviously the best price. So that way management can move, but I mean, we can also just save that for an email later if you would prefer.
You can make whatever motion you want. I'm not gonna blind approve $25,000 spend on electrical.
Maybe
It's gonna-
maybe it would be better tabling this until we can get the.
I
complete
agree.
package in.
Okay, that's fine.
I would really like to know if we can get a fast answer and if we can actually pull off number 2 or not.
well, if we're gonna be kind of tabling until we get the electrical, then we can probably get the answer to that stuff. Altogether. Mhm.
Thanks for all the work you did on
Thank
that.
you.
We're close. You can something around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
I was there replacing the same, originally there, and it was. The grid hasn't all went on, was there something fundamentally different about solution maybe for this?
So the sports tiles have improved, and also we haven't maintained our sports tiles the way we should have. As I did research on sports tiles, they're supposed to be repainted every 3 to 5 years to keep them from being so slick from like a morning dew. So at this point, we haven't maintained them the way we should have, and that's why they're slippery.
So I guess we'll wanna understand the ongoing maintenance commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that too. All right, well, that gets us through all of our new business. Yep.
I've got one motion I want to make. Regarding the use of fireworks in Belterra. In consideration of the frequent violations of Belterra Community Association's governing documents and Texas Penal Code, Title IX, Chapter 42, dealing with disorderly conduct and related offenses, and the threat to life and property posed by such behavior, I move that the HOA hire law enforcement officers to patrol the community at those times and on those dates when fireworks are most likely to be ignited, with the charter to cite violators of the state statute and gather evidence for prosecution within the association violation process.
All right, so for the record, this isn't on the official agenda, but the board has been advised that as long as we open it up to community engagement on a motion made that's not on the agenda, we can go ahead and do that. Well, I'll ask for a second, and then we can open it up for discussion, including community members. So does anyone want a second Clement's motion? Okay, so that motion was not seconded. So now we will open up to resident for Brittany. Talk about that or anything. Oh my gosh, you all come in here.
This is my one, yeah, part.
This is probably.
I'm who I'd rather read it, though. Oh, that makes sense.
Yes, please, thank you.
I came here, on specific reason. These are two photographs that, I have these two passed down. We live on the corner of Mendocino Lane and Mesa Verde. And behind us are two vacant lots. And one is for sale and one is not. And you can see from the photographs that the one that both lots are in disrepair and are just laying awful. And I'm sure if you've been around and driven down Mesa Verde, you've seen these lots. And they're just terrible. And especially bad beside the curb. And from a standard that Belterra is accustomed to, and according to their design guidelines and the standards that we hold to Belterra, I have yet to find out. And I made contact with WCID #2, made contact with Marcia, and nobody can tell who owns the lot directly to my house. In March, I contacted them, they couldn't tell me. WCID could not tell me. And the lot that is for sale by Outlaw Real Estate, contacted the owner that's listed there. And I even contacted them and made an offer under the house, but nobody contacted me back. But that's when the reasonable price outrageous. But the point of it is that nobody will own up to taking care of the property. And it's a disgrace. It really is. And I understand from the fellow that I did talk to that at one time there was 7 undeveloped pieces of property on Belterra that he owned. And since then, a couple of those have been developed. And there's still, I think, 5 or 6 undeveloped pieces of property on Belterra, maybe less now. But nevertheless, it's really a disgrace. And I have yet to find out who is responsible for maintaining those lots. And that's why.
And the kids are just for skateboard, maybe you guys can do a skateboard park.
We just start utilizing the land for them.
Yeah.
We'll be squatters.
That's the reason why. If we're going to maintain those areas to the standards that's in the design guidelines, something needs to be done to those lots. And it really wouldn't take a whole lot to maintain this. I mean, if you get a developer out to clean them up and make them presentable. And there's a lot of other pet peeves, that I have. We've been in Belterra for 5 years. And I'll give you a good example. I look at my backyard and I can see fences that have never been. They're original ugly board. And I don't know if these notices have gone out for violations or not, but it doesn't take a genius to look at those and see that the standards.
We have landscapers, we have groups of work time. We go around the neighborhoods. Drive places. That's all.
But it's kind of a minor thing, but when you look around there, well, even here, I enjoyed the debate that the board had on a lot of different items. And I enjoyed the debate on the pickleball and basketball.
but nobody is mentioned parking. Yeah.
Street parking?
There's a really good parking here in the rec center. But
Honestly, that is in my street, so I'm dreaming up of a minute, like just a strategic
daily,
survey.
it's
And
almost.
so I have thought about how we could add parking to the rec center, and that is a great idea. That is,
But I the board didn't bring up the parking. It is okay.
Thank you for.
But I wanted to thank you, for listening to my views. Thank you.
so your,
Sticking with us.
your goal
Thank
for us is to find who owns these and to.
We should be able to find out the owner.
We,
I don't,
we do know. who
Yeah.
owns them.
Oh.
It's, well, of course, they're.
well, I mean, I know we can
Yeah,
find
they're
out.
vacant lots that are just not built on, and we treat the vacant lots as we would if this was a front yard and their
Right.
landscaping was out of control. The issue that we have run into very, very recently was, and you know, Darla's still learning, so she comes to me with these questions, is she said, can we just go mow these? And I said, well, okay, that's a very generic question, give you a little more information. And she was, and I don't know if it was one of these specifically, but the owner, she sent a violation letter to a vacant lot owner. And they called and said, can't you just mow it and charge her? But we're not in the landscaping business. So there's a little bit of a detachment of responsibility for some of these vacant lot owners that they forget about it's there, or they need to hire someone. So we do pursue these individuals who own these lots, and you can go to Collin County or to Dallas.
That is-
Hayes County, thank you. Hayes County CAD, and you can find out exactly who owns them. It's public knowledge who owns these, owns these lots. So the owners are not unknown, and we do pursue them. And what is frustrating from a community standards or compliance standpoint for me, and every colleague I have in this industry, is a lack of compliance automatically gives a perception to residents, owners, the other owners in the community, that we are not pursuing it. So it's not always the case that we're just not pursuing it, because I can tell you, I take many phone calls a day for people upset with Darla because she sent them a letter for not stating their offense. Somebody mentioned earlier about CCNC's kind of enhanced efforts towards community standards. And so, yes, there has been a little more of a ramp up of it recently. So it will take some time to get some of these things ironed out, but I will definitely take these addresses and research with Darla tomorrow to see kind of where we're at in the process. And we will get a feel for who some of our repeat offenders are. There's some leeway in the law, because all of everything we do from a community standards standpoint is governed by state law. Meaning we have to give people a cure period. It's a minimum of 10 days to bring it up to snuff. So that means we legally cannot send them letters any more frequently than 10 days. So that gets very, very frustrating. 3 letters for 30 days in, you know, and so you're sitting there looking at all this going, why aren't they doing something about this? So it gets to be really frustrating for us as well, and probably not nearly as much as it is for you, because I can understand how frustrating it would be looking at this. But I'll definitely take a look at these, figure out where we are in the process. And if they have been repeat offenders, see if we can accelerate that, because repeat offender gives us a little bit more justification for accelerating the process.
Well, those lots have been in that shape months, months. And the one that's for sale is only in good shape when they first put it up for sale and they cleaned them up. But that was the only, and the lot behind us has been that way for years. Not months, years.
We do have the ability to do what we call, I can call it self-help, where we go in and take care of it. But like I said, we have to use that judiciously, because the fee that's associated with that, so whatever land care charges us to go mow it, we directly back charge to the resident of that, or the owner of that vacant lot. The trouble with that is it gets into a whole other realm of, you know, it's considered a fine and lienable, and then so if something goes sideways, basically you and your neighbors may end up paying that. So that's why we have to use that judiciously, which is another reason why we're not just going to go, yeah, we'll go with that charge, because that is not a fee that's recoverable should they choose not to pay it. So there's a whole myriad of things, but I really appreciate you bringing these to my attention so that I can, you know, research it with Darla and see if we can get a resolution to this as soon as possible.
I have yet to be able to find the owner of the lot record, even in Hayes County. You look at it, nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Remind me of the final conclusion of situation where someone does not mow their lawn. What is the ultimate end game for everybody's lawn? In that category, just continuing to accumulate fines or?
We will do self-help, we will go and take care of it, but we have to provide them and notice that we're doing that.
It's just the process.
Yeah.
They keep racking up the bill.
That's right.
Eventually would need legal action to hold them accountable to that if they did not.
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks for informing us on all that, Marcia.
Absolutely. Take those complaints to your state legislator, because they're the ones who can make the change in what we can and can't do.
Because there's not much enforcement. I mean, it's not like that in Florida, but here your hands are tied.
Yep. Yep, so don't even, let's not even get started on that. It's bad there.
No one's online, right?
Oh, wait, you got one question. Oh, no, let's see here. Thank you for letting me know about that, complication with the Zoom link. No questions.
Well, there being no further business to consider, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kat, for the second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion.
Somebody said, I was like, no, it's not.
Given that I've not received candidacy forms from Clement, Jamie, and Jennifer, this might be their last meeting, but they.
Well, since we only have one applicant, that means that two people can't leave, so.
So you come back and say, okay, you're looking over yourself. When?
You've done a great job on board.
Or you're getting.